A raven circles once, then twice, its wings cutting like blades through the wet morning mist. Beneath it, the castle exhales a low, rattling breath as if sighing from within its bones. The moor lies silent, drowned in fog, as if the world itself refuses to bear witness. Stone crumbles beneath ivy's grip. Once defiant towers sag, weeping moss from their crowns. And somewhere behind the fractured curtain wall, a bell, long rusted, long forgotten, shudders in the wind without sound. The air is thick with mildew and smoke, the ghosts of fires long dead. The banners still hang, tattered but unyielding, embroidered with lions now blind, saints with threadbare halos, stitched by hands who sang hymns to gods they would later curse. No one dares cut them down. To do so would be to disturb something still watching. This was not always a ruin. It once breathed with purpose, heavy with song, steel, and the stench of coal fires. The Lord who raised it did so not through divine right, but brute will. His name is absent from church records, scratched out from royal scrolls, but the wind still remembers it. It hisses it through the slits in the tower, low and venomous, like a blade unsheathed in darkness. He came from the mines, they say, not born into blood, but forged in it. His hands bore the calluses of laborers, yet he wrapped them in silk stolen from dead bishops. He built his castle with stone quarried from cursed hills, bound it with lime mixed with bone dust, and crowned it with spires tall enough to mock heaven. He ruled not with law, but with fear. His justice meted out beneath oil lamps in the crypt, where every scream was muffled by design. At his table, allies dined beside the condemned. Chains clinked under the floorboards, sometimes in rhythm with the music. The servants learned to hum louder when the wailing began. Still, the feast continued. Spiced lamb, bitter wine, and sugared fruit. Blood washed from the stones each morning. Incense burned to cover the stink of guilt. The chapel stands still, though the roof has caved in. Rain now baptizes the altar freely, and ivy curls like serpents around the crucifix. Yet below it, below the sacred stone, a door remains sealed. Iron nails hold it shut, each blackened with time and ritual. A child once found it. She wandered in from the moor chasing a bird. When she returned, she could no longer speak. Her eyes were too wide, her mouth locked in silence. Her hands were blistered with nettles, slick with candle wax. She never held a pen again, only drew tower mouths, lidless eyes, staircases that led into screaming. The villagers, those few who still linger on the moor's edge, speak softly of the door. Some say it weeps at night. Others claim they've seen the iron warm beneath moonlight, as if something on the other side still breathes. Once a drunkard tried to pry it open. His body was found on the roof by dawn, arms folded like prayer, eyes melted to ash. And there is an heir, the cursed last blood, born of a mother no one recalls, and a father whom none dare speak of without wine in hand. He was to be married, they say, a rare chance for peace, to wash the castle clean in ceremony and joy. The bride arrived with her retinue, cloaked in pearl and frost, her eyes wary but willing. She never stepped inside. That morning, the heir vanished. No farewell, no horse, no blood. Only a cloak folded atop the highest rampart, and a ring, his father's, sunken into the mortar below, as if pressed there by regret.
Some say he fled, others say he was claimed, but the castle did not fall with him. It simply waited, as if something left unfinished still stirred beneath the stones. Fires no longer burn, yet sometimes warmth leaks from beneath locked doors. Footsteps echo in empty corridors. The dining hall, with its collapsed ceiling, still smells of lamb on cold mornings. And if you stand in the west wing where the portraits once hung, you may hear them whispering. Not words, just the dry rasp of canvas stretching, mouths trying to move beneath decades of dust. Outside, the land itself recoils. Crops refuse to grow near the wall's shadow. Animals are still. Water from the nearby spring tastes of iron like old coins pressed to the tongue. Even crows avoid nesting in ruins. They fly overhead, ever circling, never landing. But people still come. They always do. The curious, the desperate, the forgotten. Some seek treasure, others answer. They enter with torches high, but their footsteps fade too soon. And though none see it, the moss grows faster once they pass. The ivy coils tighter. The door below the chapel sweats a little more. The wind returns to its whispering. This place is no longer a castle. It is a wound. Open and festering, too old to close, too sacred to cauterize. It does not beg for mercy. It does not hunger for revenge. It simply remembers. Every scream, every betrayal, every prayer that rose from the chapel floor only to be swallowed before reaching the heavens. Some ruins fall quietly. This one hums. A low, persistent thrum that seeps into the soil and waits for blood, for sorrow, for the next name to be etched into the stone. And the story does not end here. In the next breath, we follow a trail of letters carved into bark. A pilgrim's desperate attempt to document what he saw before the fog swallowed him. His path leads us deeper, beyond the moor, beyond the blood-stained dais, toward another kept veiled in crimson banners and thorned roses. A place where a forgotten queen still sings lullabies into a poisoned garden, and the wind carries her song to those willing to listen. The frost arrived early that year. It did not fall like snow or crash like a storm. Crept, quiet and crystalline, sheathing the stones of the old keep in a fine white crust, like sugar laid upon bone. From the hillside, the tower gleamed with a kind of terrible grace, a purity born not of holiness but of silence. But up close the lie gave way. Rot had bled through the mortar. The joints of the ancient walls oozed with damp, and where the gargoyles once roared defiantly toward the heavens, they now wept trails of moss and rust, their fangs dulled, their eyes hollowed by centuries. The stones whispered when the wind passed through them, a sound not unlike a breath held too long, then released in grief. Above the chapel, a solitary bell hung crooked in its frame. Its clapper had been taken by a monk in the dead of night, a man who claimed the bell had cried out during evening mass, though no hand touched it. He fled barefoot through the snow, carrying the clapper wrapped in linen, whispering prayers in a language no longer spoken. He drowned before dawn, and the clapper was never found. But the bell remained, silent, watching. At its base, candles still appeared, small, white, fresh, never burned, never melted. Nobody saw who placed them. No one dared light them. They were offerings, or warnings. This was the castle of the Lady of Ashes. Her real name is gone, worn like writing on wet parchment. The only image of her once hung in the great hall. A portrait turned slightly askew, eyes averted, veil low. The artist, they say, was driven mad before he finished. He painted her hands too long, her gaze too wide, and left the canvas unfinished, because he could not paint what he could not understand. Some claimed she wore gray from the day she could walk. Gray like the smoke that rises from sacred ruins. Gray like the sky before thunder speaks. She was betrothed at 14, to a man whose power came not from grace, but coin and cruelty. A man thrice her age, twice widowed, his name preserved only in records of land and livestock. Their wedding was not a celebration, but a spectacle. Minstrels played, doves were lost, and then the bedding was performed before the court, as custom demanded. Blood on white sheets, bitter wine passed from hand to hand. And as she rose the next morning, her veil still untouched, the servants noticed the floor behind her bore no dust. Only soot, like footprints, burned into memory. The lady did not weep, nor did she speak. She walked the ramparts barefoot, even in frost, whispering names no one recognized. Not saints, not ancestors, just syllables that tasted like sorrow. The guards began to fear her. They avoided her corridor. Doors stayed closed when she passed, though she never touched them. Some said she hummed in the dark. Others claimed her eyes did not blink. But the cook, an old woman with shaking hands, was the first to see it. Every night, a trail of soot from the lady's chamber led to the hearth in the grand hall. And one night the cook followed it. There, beneath the stones, she found the box. Small, bone-carved, salt-packed, a child unborn, curled like a secret, bloodless, breathless. The cook screamed once, then vanished into the woods, her apron later found tied to a tree, stiff with brine. The Lord died days later, choked on a pheasant bone during a feast.
His face turned purple in the torchlight, and the guests, trained in courtly stillness, did not rise. Only the lady moved. She rose, placed her goblet down, and left the hall. No grief touched her lips. No question was asked. She retired to her tower. She never left it again. Then came the fire. It began at night, though no storm raged. Flames raced along the wooden beams, as if guided by hands unseen. Banners curled and blackened. Iron groaned. Walls cracked from heat and history. Yet the tower where she slept remained untouched. Its windows still intact, the air inside cool, almost holy. When the blaze finally consumed the great hall, and the smoke settled into the bones of the stone, she was gone. Not a thread, not a whisper. Only her comb remained, silver, still warm, resting atop her windowsill. They rebuilt, as all noblemen do. The castle rose again, stone by stone, but no room bore her name. No painting was rehung. The Lady of Ashes had vanished, but she had not been erased. Her ashes, they say, were mixed with the mortar used to bind the new keep. Lime and soot and sorrow, blended by masons who never looked each other in the eye. Since then, the walls have sweat when it rains. Not water, something thicker. Visitors say it smells of lilac and smoke. And sometimes, if you press your ear against the cold stone in silence, you may hear a lullaby. Hummed, not sung. Sweet but wrong, like a child's tune played backward. Some guests awake with soot beneath their fingernails. Others find gray footprints outside their doors. No one stays more than a night, and so the keep began to devour itself. Not in flames this time, but in memory. Ivy twisted through its ribs. Bats claimed the belfry. The floorboards warped and wept. Even the rats fled. A castle once gilded with ambition now gnawed upon itself. Stone grinding against stone, as if trying to forget what it once held. And yet, she remains.
Not as a ghost, not as shady, but in the mortar, in the silence between bells, in the rooms that always feel colder even in summer. The Lady of Ashes is no longer a woman. She is breathing within stone, memory bound by ritual, her grief baked into architecture. She waits, not for vengeance, not for prayer. She waits for recognition, for someone who will say her name not in fear but in mourning, for a soul who will step barefoot into the tower and speak to the silence, not over it. But no one has dared, not yet, and so we move on, beyond her walls, through the forest she once walked barefoot in frost, toward another place where mercy was never taught, where a knight prayed with bloodied hands, where forgiveness had a price carved in flesh. A tower where the bell still rings, but only when the wind lies, and the rope that hangs within tightens with each truth withheld. The wind rolls in from the cliffs like a dying breath, thick with salt, thick with something older. It presses against the bones of the fortress as if trying to wake it. But the stone does not move. It only leans, heavy with centuries, slick with sorrow, forever listening to the sea scream at its foundations. Below, the tide thrashes against the black rock. Not in rhythm, not in rage, but in warning. The castle clings to the cliffs like a body refusing burial. Ivy strangles its walls, winding like veins over cracked mortar, reaching toward windows once filled with divine light. The chapel's stained glass, once a kaleidoscope of holy vision, is shattered except for the red. That color remains. It stains the broken panes with the hue of martyrdom, of blood spilled in devotion or denial, of wrath that was never repented. Here, rain tastes iron. The waves carry whispers, and the bells no longer ring for life. It was a priest who built this place, a man who wore armor over his robes and prayed with his hands stained from war. They called him the Sword of Grace, a title carved in the mouths of those who feared him too much to question his faith. He broke his vows not in secret, but in daylight, on the altar itself, claiming the world had changed and the heavens must adapt. He carved a shrine into the cliffs and raised a keep above it. Here, absolution came by labor. Pilgrims arrived barefoot, praying for mercy. Prisoners followed, shackled and silent. Both bled into the stone beneath the chapel, their sins chiseled away with pickaxe and sweat. The priest offered forgiveness, but never released. And when they disobeyed, they vanished. Some said they were given to the sea. Others whispered of crypts below the chapel, rooms carved too deep, too dark. No records were kept. The bells never rang for the lost. Then one evening, as the gulls fell silent and even the wind dared not move, a procession came. Monks in black, hoods low, faces pale as candle wax. They walked in perfect silence, bearing a reliquary wrapped in crimson velvet, stitched with silver thread that shimmered without light. The object pulsed, some said, as if breathing, as if bound. They entered the chapel without word or welcome and placed it beneath the altar, locking it behind an iron grate sealed with 3 keys. No one was told what it held, only that it could never be opened. After that, the sea changed. Tides rose without moonlight. Storms crashed in spring. Livestock bore twins, too many limbs, too many eyes. Then none at all. And when prayers were lifted, the sky did not answer. Only the gulls, once loud and mocking, watched in stillness, their cries muted, their shadows longer. The priest retreated to his tower, abandoning the chapel he once blessed. He stopped giving sermons, stopped washing, stopped speaking altogether. They say he sat before the sea each night, whispering to it in Latin, one word over and over, ab conde. Hide it. And the boy climbed the bell tower. He was only 12. A scullion. Thin, eager, fearless. He said he heard a voice calling from above, soft and golden like a mother singing through a door. He climbed past the broken stairs, past the rotting beams, and found the bell chamber. He returned with blood on his lips and terror in his throat. There are eyes in the dark, he wept. Eyes that do not blink. Tongues that speak backward. They know my name. They know all our names. He tried to draw what he saw. Circles upon circles. Eyes upon eyes. A crown of teeth. And a voice that looked like light but burned like flame. That night he was silenced. They say it was mercy. A cold blade across the neck, swift and still. His body was sealed behind the library wall where no books have been kept since. The door bricked over. The key swallowed by a crow that perched there for days, unmoving, unblinking, watching the sea. And then the castle fell quiet. The pilgrims stopped coming. The prisoners stopped arriving. The prayers thinned like smoke in the wind. Only the reliquary remained beneath the chapel, behind the grate, wrapped in velvet that never gathered dust. No one dared touch it. Not even the priest, who died staring at the waves, salt crystallized in his beard, lips locked in an unspoken vow. Years passed. Then decades. Now the keep is empty. Its halls echo with drip and draft. Footsteps that begin and never end. The chapel door hangs crooked on one hinge. Pews are shattered, scripture soaked in mold. But the altar still stands. And the grate below it remains sealed. Yet something stirs. On nights when the moon is full and the sea falls still, unnaturally still, a sound drifts from the cliffs. A hymn. Faint. Ancient. In no known tongue, yet familiar to the bones. It coils through the corridors like a memory, like incense rising from forgotten flesh. It curls into ears not ready to hear. And those who listen too long dream of salt and chains and something weeping in joy. And if you listen just a little longer, you may hear the grate begin to rattle. Only once. Then silence. Then nothing. But the dead do not sleep easily, especially when buried beneath holy lies. And this castle holds too many of them. It was built not on stone, but on secrecy. On penance unpaid. On relics that should never have been touched. It is not haunted, it is preserved. Preserved in warning, not reverence. The sea claws at it still. Storm after storm. Wave after wave. As if trying to reclaim what lies beneath. But the stone holds firm. Not because it is strong, but because it is afraid. And so it waits. For another voice, for another key, for another vow to be broken in the name of light. The hymn will return, the reliquary will hum, and the eyes will open again, but not yet. First, we must travel inland, away from the sea, into the woods where thorns grow in spirals and birds forget their songs. To a ruined tower where a queen once vanished in smoke. A garden of poisons. A girl with a silver comb and a name no one dared speak. There, the soil is not soaked with salt, but with silence. And something still blooms in the dark. Snow falls in silence. Not gently, not cruelly, just without end. It muffles the ruins like a burial shroud, softening the jagged bones of what was once a living court. Here, the forest has not merely encroached, it has devoured. Roots pierce the floors where dancers once spun, their tendrils thick with hunger, slick with sap, curling around flagstones as if remembering their placement better than men ever did. A broken chair still rests atop the dais, its velvet seat clawed open, stuffing spilled like innards beneath frost. The back bears a blackened scar, charred where fire once kissed it but failed to consume. Birds nest in the rafters where once banners swayed. Their droppings stain the faded emblems of forgotten lords. Feathers drift down like falling ash. The air here tastes of iron and smoke. Not freshly, but faintly, like the memory of blood. Like the scent of a feast spoiled long ago. It clings to the tongue and settles behind the teeth. This was the seed of a queen. A woman whose name no scroll dares speak. The scribes struck her from the records not with ink, but with fear. Only fragments remain. A silver comb found among the ashes. A tapestry too faded to read, its threads bleached pale by sun and silence. Her legend, however, whispered beneath cloaks, traded by firelight, clings to the bones of this place like frost to glass. She came from the east, they say, veiled in crimson. Her procession stretched for days. Beasts with silk bridles. Camels with mirrored saddles. Slaves who sang without words. Her eyes were the color of dusk. She spoke little. I watched a lot. Smiled rarely, but when she did, the air grew still. Her presence quieted the court. Nobles who once spoke with clattering joy found themselves whispering beneath her gaze. Music drifted slower, lower. Servants walked more softly, as if the very stone had changed its echo to suit her will. She wore perfumes of frankincense and crushed thorns. Her hands were never seen uncovered. She dined alone, and in the courtyard she built a garden. Not of roses, not of fruit, but of poisons. Nightshade and monkshood, belladonna and foxglove. Flowers that opened only beneath the moonlight, petals pale as bone, edges sharp as blades. They whispered when the wind passed. Some said they breathed. The gardener, a man loyal for 3 generations, vanished after a single season. The cook began repeating the same word in his sleep, backward, backward, until one morning he forgot his own name. They had to tie him to the chimney post to stop him from wandering into the garden barefoot in snow. Still, the nobles bowed. They smiled. They sent gifts and offered flattery. Not from loyalty, not from love, but from a terror they could not name. A sense that something in her presence was not entirely hers. That beneath the veil was not a woman, but something borrowed. Her son was born during a thunderstorm. The wind split trees that night. Lightning struck and shattered the chapel bell. The prince did not cry. Not once. Not as an infant. Not as a boy. The nurses said he slept with eyes open. That he hummed in his sleep, not a child's song, but a drone like chanting through water. They found the tutor dead after his first lesson. No wound. No struggle. Just slumped, eyes wide, a quill still wet in his hand. The ink had soaked through the parchment, spelling nothing but circles. Then the courtiers began to disappear. Not all at once. Just one by one. A chambermaid missing at dawn. A baron found locked inside his own room, the door sealed from within, the fire long burned out. A knight rode into the woods and never returned. His horse came back without a rider, its hooves bloodied, its eyes crusted with salt. No one asked questions. Only the steward dared write it down. His journal was discovered long after, pages torn and bound shut with hair. On the final sheet, only this: she brushes her hair in reverse. Then, one day, the queen herself was gone. No screams. No rebellion. No ritual. Just absence. Her comb remained silver, finely wrought, its teeth still warm as though freshly held. Prince was also missing. His cradle stood empty, and the stone beneath it smelled of lilac and smoke. A month passed. Then came the fire. Not from outside. Not by torch or blade. It bloomed from within. A flame without source, heat without smoke. The walls did not burn, they melted. The tapestries curled like dying leaves. The bell tower split, and the air filled with a sound no one could name. Screams echoed, but not pain. They were higher, like birds crying backward through time. By dawn, the forest had begun its work. Ivy crawled over the scorched gates. Snow fell heavy as if summoned. The castle was buried in silence, and yet not forgotten. Travelers speak of a woman in red walking the edge of the trees, always at dusk, always brushing her hair with silver. Her back is never turned. Her face is never seen. Her hum is soft, but it coils into the mind like steam beneath skin. No one remembers the melody, but all who hear it swear they've known it since childhood. And the forest listens. Its branches lean toward her. The animals fall still. Even the wind ceases for her passage. For this is no ghost, no memory. This is the echo of something that never finished speaking. A love too strange, power too quiet, a story that refused to fade. Because some stories do not end. They throb. They pulse beneath moss and ash, waiting for breath. And the garden still blooms. The petals open beneath the moon. The roots shift in the soil. And somewhere beneath the snow, something stirs. Small, patient, growing. But the next tale waits further north.
where frost never melts and daylight forgets to come. There, atop a cliff of black ice, stands a fortress carved from salt and grief, a place where absolution was sold for blood, and the dead are sealed behind bells that never ring. The prince may have reached it, or perhaps only his shadow. Either way, the snow falls heavier now, and the silence is no longer empty. The rain will not stop. It seeps through the roof like memory returning through a crack in the mind, slow, cold, and without apology. Silver bowls, long tarnished and dented, line the floor beneath the leaks. They catch each drop with a dull metallic thud, and in the silence that follows, the echoes sound like counting. Not of time, but of trespass. Somewhere above, the wind pushes through broken shutters, stirring the dust into reluctant motion. The air is thick with damp stone and the lingering perfume of old incense, sour now as if penance had soured in the absence of prayer. A crucifix hangs over the hearth, tilted, blackened. The Christ upon it is scorched, his features lost in charcoal, arms bent slightly too far, as if once they strained to pull free. The heart beneath him has not known flame in years. Wood brought inside will not burn. It only smolders. Whimpers. Give up. The last lord of this house died during Mass. The chalice in his hand filled with blood before the wine touched it. He stared into it with disbelief, then wonder, then terror. He did not scream. He simply fell. The priest who raised the cup vanished before the echo of his collapse faded. No footprints, no blood trail, just the robe folded neatly on the altar. The villagers gathered for a trial, but no trial was held. Instead, they came with stones and ash. They bricked the chapel shut, sealing the door with wet mortar and words they dared not speak aloud. One man sprinkled holy water. Another wept. Then they left and they did not return. That was 27 winters ago. The rain has not stopped since. Below the flagstones lies a labyrinth, a sprawl of forgotten rooms and half-dug intentions. No map exists. Only rumors. Candle stubs mark the path for those who dare descend. But no flame burns long in the dark beneath this house. The wicks sputter. The wax curdles. The shadows inhale. One room is lined with mirrors. All are cracked, each fracture running like veins across the glass. They reflect the space perfectly, but never the person within. Sometimes reflection moves slightly slower. Sometimes not at all. In another room sits an iron cradle. Thick, spiked, made not for comfort but for punishment or proof. Its bedding is soaked in mildew and the wood beneath is soft, rotting from beneath. No child has been born in this house in over 40 years. And yet, when the storm howls just right, a lullaby threads through the air, gentle, tuneless, almost bored. The kind a nursemaid might hum to something not meant to grow. At night, the house groans. Not the polite creaking of old wood. No, this is deeper. Hungrier. Like a voice trying to remember how to form words. Doors open without wind. Curtains sway without breath. The rats avoid certain corridors entirely. One room smells of cinnamon and iron. No one goes near it. Years ago, a woman came. An archivist. Young. Careful. Hopeful. She believed this place held answers. She set up camp in the library, brushing away decades of dust to uncover fragments, names half scratched out, dates written in reverse numerals, prayers that ended mid-sentence. She wrote obsessively, until her writing changed. Her notebooks began to fill with sketches of a face always the same. Oval, thin, without eyes. A mouth stitched shut. Not grotesque, but pleading. Watching. Some pages were rewritten over and over. Others were torn and rearranged, as if trying to trap the truth into a form that could not escape. Her final entry read only this. It watches through the stone. She was found curled beneath the lectern. Breathing. Eyes open. But the voice was gone. Her tongue remained, but not the will to use it. She now lives in a convent where she weaves veils and refuses to sleep indoors. Her notebooks remain. Now the house watches itself. Windows' long bricks still reflect moonlight. Walls seem closer some nights, farther others. The statues, once proud, Roman, draped in cloaks of nobility, shift ever so slightly from season to season. Their heads tilt just a bit more. Their hands seem to grip tighter. The marble eyes never change, but they never look the same. Those who enter feel it. Not anger, not welcome, but attention. As though the walls are not simply walls, but membranes, holding something in, or out, or remembering. A place once meant for shelter now functions as a witness. The house does not haunt. It does not hunt. It remembers every footstep, every lie told over bread, every scream muffled beneath the chapel floor, every unbaptized name, every offer was refused, and like fruit too long on the branch, it has begun to rot. Sweetly, softly, the kind of decay that makes you lean in before it poisons, a ruin that blushes before it turns. But ruins do not die, not fully, they become thresholds, and something waits on the other side. Those who stay long enough report hearing bells, not from the brick chapel, but beneath their feet. A low, distant toll, not timed, not urgent, just present, steady, as if marking the passage of something older than ours. Some say the bells are counting births. Others say they're waiting for one. There is a rumor of a child. Not born, not buried, just kept. A child who never drew breath, yet whose name is etched beneath the altar stone, too deep to chisel away. A name not spoken since the first frost. A name that causes the wine to curdle if whispered aloud. The rain will not stop. The bowls are full. And the crucifix, now damp with mold, has begun to tilt further. The floorboards sag with the weight of watching. The mirrors still hum with light that never enters the room. And in the garden, wild roses grow where no seed was planted. Each bloom is redder than the last. Soon the house will be empty. Soon it will call again. But for now we move on. Through the veil of rain, across the sodden moor, toward a hill that holds nothing above, but everything below. To a tomb carved not for the dead, but for memory. A place where silence is sacred, and the bones remember the prayers that men have forgotten. The ground is sinking, and what sleeps beneath it dreams still. A bell tolls, though the rope lies still. Its cry travels across the moor, a deep, aching sound that tastes of iron and winter. It does not announce. It remembers. One slow note, then silence. Then again, softer, like something ancient exhaling beneath the weight of its own duty. The fog comes thick here, not in wisps or curls, but in sheets, blanketing the turrets like bridal lace left too long in a grave. The stone breathes it in, holds it in its pores, and exhales nothing. Moisture drips from every edge, pooling in cracks, running along moss-draped walls like veins along the back of a withered hand. Inside, water falls, slow, steady, a drip from the high chapel ceiling, striking stone with a patience that mocks time. Each drop echoes into the nave, reverberating between pews that have not held the living in generations. The doors resist those who enter. Their hinges shriek, rust weeping from the joints like old blood. They swing not on command, but on memory. They groan like beasts too wounded to rise, still guarding a master who has long since crumbled to dust. This was the stronghold of Sir Edrin of Velmere, the knight who would not bend. They say he was born in silence and raised in scripture, that his first word was oath, and his first act was to bind it. His code was his skin, inked, branded, carved. Each line is a law, each promise is a scar. He ruled not through cruelty, but clarity. Mercy, he said, was a kindness stolen from justice. Forgiveness was a lie disguised as grace. He built a tower for confession, round, windowless, cold. The penitent was sent inside. The door shut behind them. There was no handle within. Only scripture carved into stone and a single sharpened quill. None emerged but him. What was spoken there he carried in silence. What was done he wrote down in blood. The records were sealed behind the chapel altar, wrapped in chains, then buried in wax. Over time his body changed, not from age but from conviction. He wore a rope around his waist, a thin hempen strand that he vowed would tighten each time he strayed from truth. At first it was a ceremony, then a reminder, then the burden. By the end, it was embedded, threaded into flesh, carving its promise into his ribs, bleeding anew with each breath. He did not remove it. He could not. He died kneeling, face lifted to the altar, mouth slightly parted, as if mid-plea or final prayer. His knees fused to the cold floor, skin bonded to stone. No one moved him. No one tried. They sealed the chapel doors and left him to the silence he had long worshipped. But silence does not forget. Even now, at dusk, the candles light themselves. No hand seen, no flame visible. A silver goblet rests on the altar, untouched, half full, always glistening. Some say it holds wine, others say blood. A few claim it's only water, but that those who drink from it dream in tongues they do not know. Beneath the pews, names are scratched into the wood. Dozens, hundreds, carved not with care, but desperation. The work of fingernails and broken blades. Most are illegible now. The wood has warped. The letters bled together. But a few remain. First names only. No dates. No prayers. Just presence. At night, the dreams come. Travelers who stray too close, those who camp by the outer walls, lulled by the fog's hush, wake sweating. Some say they smell smoke. Others speak of sword clashes echoing through stone. A few wake with bruises along their arms and necks shaped like fingers. None remember falling. One man, young, clean of soul, curious, claimed to hear a voice. Soft, low, echoing not in his ears but behind his eyes. The words were not his own. Not Latin. Not prayer. Yet they promised something that every bone in his body yearned for, absolution. He followed the voice into the woods. He did not return. Those who have searched found only footprints leading out and none returning. The trail ends at the river. Beside it, a single silver feather, twisted and blackened at the tip. The castle remembers. It remembers every vow broken within its walls. Every scream was stifled by stone. Every quill dipped in confession and left to dry on lips that never learned silence. The chapel now breathes. Walls expand and contract with the temperature, sighing with ancient burden. The altar sweats beneath the goblet. The rope once worn by Sir Edrin still hangs behind the crucifix, frayed now, stained, but humming faintly as if yearning for flesh again. What was built as a sanctuary has become a ledger. Each stone is a page. Each draft of wind across the corridor, a line written. The castle does not curse. It records every breath, every betrayal, every prayer abandoned in favor of steel. It keeps no score, but it forgets nothing. There are those who say the knight still kneels beneath the chapel dome. That his bones have become part of the floor. That when lightning strikes them more, shadows gather around the sealed doors, not to pray, but to bear witness. And when the bell tolls, though none see it swing, it is not a call. It is a reminder that somewhere, beneath the weight of rain and silence and vow, the stone still weeps. It weeps for the oath-bound, for the forgiven, and for those who believed that mercy was weakness. The rope tightens. The candle burns without flame. The goblet remains half full. But the wind shifts now. Eastward, where a citadel rises from the hills like a tooth from rot. A place where queens were crowned in winter and executed before spring. Where masks became law and a face was considered treason. Where no shadow ever matched its source and the walls learned to lie. That is where we must go next. The fog is lifting, but the truth only thickens. At dusk, the nettles sway like breath, brushing the ruined stones with a hiss too steady to be wind. The courtyard is choked with them, wild, bitter plants clawing their way up through cracks in flagstone, thorned vines wrapping the old well like a serpent embracing bone. Their leaves sting the skin, but the pain feels musical, like the final pluck of a lute string just before it snaps. And still, something hums. Not a melody, not a voice, just a vibration soft, low, somewhere between wood and wind. As if a song were being held inside the walls, struggling to remember itself. Once, this was a place of joy. Not of feast halls or tournaments, but of sonnets whispered at candlelight, of sketches drawn on the backs of scrolls, of dances improvised beneath rain. A sanctuary for those whose minds bent toward beauty. The Lord who built it believed that the soul of the world was music and that violence was its silence. He welcomed not warriors, but weavers of wonder, harpists with blistered fingers, painters who saw gods in dew, poets who spoke in riddles only children understood. Their laughter once echoed through these corridors, soft and strange, like birdsong in a cathedral. But beauty is a blade too fine to last. It began with the painter. He drowned in his own pigments, slumped face down in a vat of blue so deep it looked like the sky itself had opened to swallow him. They found his brushes placed neatly beside the edge. His final canvas showed a door. Not in the castle. Not in any room known to man. Just a door, floating in darkness, slightly ajar. Then the poet, found hanging in the tower, ink staining the stone around him. Lines scrawled in blood formed a circle at his feet. Not in his hand, they said. Too elegant. Too old. And yet, they rhymed in a way that hurt to read. One by one, the dreamers disappeared. A sculptor carved her own name backward into marble, then walked into the woods naked, never seen again.
The harp is played without pause for 3 days. Her fingers bled down the strings like veins unraveling. On the 4th day, the music stopped. The harp remained, the seat warm. Her final song is still etched into the stone, vibrating underfoot if you listen with bare skin. They say the castle consumed them. Not in fury, not in hunger, but in awe. As if the walls could not bear to let the beauty go. As if the dreams poured into the air had been too vast to escape, and so the castle stitched them into itself. You can hear them still if you sit quietly. Songs never sung, verses half-whispered, images that flicker in candlelight though no one is holding a brush. Mirrors reflect what was never there. Strangers with sad eyes. Lovers who never existed. Sometimes the reflection turns away from you. Sometimes it smiles. The fountain no longer gives water. It spills petals instead. Crimson, violet, silver, too soft to have bloomed from any real plant. Each morning they vanish, and each morning they return. Then came the girl. She was young, a barely grown, voice still cracking between child and woman. She came not as an artist, but as a sister. Her brother had vanished here, a flautist with a mind too tender for war. She carried his journal in one hand, a lantern in the other, and hope in her chest like a fire refusing to die. She signed her name in the guest book. A simple name. Lyria. Below it, a note in her brother's hand, this place sings in colors. Her room remains untouched. The bed still bears the shape of her sleep. A feather lies on the pillow, not from a bird, but something larger, unknown. Her quill still glistens with ink, though the well is dry. And beside it, a page with just one line. There is a voice beneath the floor. It speaks in riddles only dreamers understand. She was last seen standing at the edge of the well, her lantern held aloft, casting a circle of gold in the rising mist. She was humming. Not a song anyone recognized, but one the castle knew. The vines had curled away from her feet. No one saw her again. Now silence reigns, but it is not empty. It pulses. Like breath. Like music held too long. The very stone seems to strain under the weight of unsung songs, unfinished paintings, poems left half-whispered in the dark. It is not haunted by death, but by longing. The longing of what was never completed. Of dreams too large for parchment. Of beauty that refused to die and instead fermented, sweet at first, then strange, then something else. Something with form. With memory. With hunger. This place is not cursed. It is possessed. By every note that trembled with truth. By every color that shimmered too brightly to exist. By every love that was never returned and every story that had no ending. It is not evil. It is echo. And those who stay too long do not leave as they were. They forget what time feels like. They dream in foreign colors. They find rhymes on their skin. They begin to hum without knowing why. And when they finally vanish, the castle sighs. Softly, almost gratefully, as if it has learned a new stanza. As if the song is one breath closer to the whole. But even songs must sleep. The vines grow thicker each year. The nettles rise. The wind forgets to pass. The crows, once loud, now watch in silence. And still the lute string hums. Somewhere deeper, in a room no key fits, the walls are glowing faintly, pulsing in time with something below. A heart, perhaps. Or a memory. Or a mouth still learning the first note. The dreamers are not gone. They are here. They are the mortar. They are the dust. They are the echo behind every silence. But now we must leave them. East, where the hills sharpen into teeth, where a river runs black not with sin, but with time itself. There, upon the water's edge, stands a fortress of mirrors and masks, where no one is born with a face and memory is currency. A place where the